welcome to my channel. So let's go over basic stitches today. This will get you on the right path to start learning how to crochet, follow patterns, and maybe even make up your own design someday. So first we're going to go over the chain stitch. I'm using 4-weight yarn, just acrylic yarn here, and I'm using a 3.75 millimeter hook for this. If you have purchased a kit from me, thank you for your purchase. You'll have a 5.5 millimeter hook in your kit, and you will have some of this 4-weight acrylic yarn in there, as well as the fluffy soft yarn. So if you want to practice with the acrylic yarn first, it's probably a good idea to get used to like where your stitches are and whatnot, and it'll be a little bit easier to recognize your stitches with this. To transfer to the fluffy yarn, you'll be able to kind of see it better there as well, as opposed to just starting with the fluffy yarn. So let's get started. So first we're going to go over a slip knot. We're going to do it both ways because I tend to do it differently for different things. So if I'm going to do a magic loop, then I start with the tail down and use the length to make my X. If I'm going to do the chain 2 method to make my loop, then I use the tail to make my loop, because then that'll end up with the different ends closing the loop differently. So let's start with the chain 2, and we'll go over how to chain as well. So I'm going to hold the working yarn in my hand with the tail up. I'm going to hold my palm facing me, and I'm going to grab it to secure it here, flip my hand over, and I'm going to bring this working yarn down underneath my hand to the right of that loop that's on my fingers already, and then back up and over to the left of it, and I kind of secure it here in place with my pinky, and I make this nice X here, which just makes it a little easier for me to see what strand that I'm grabbing. So then I go under this first one, over this second one, and you're just going to pull this through, and this is going to be your loop here that we've pulled through. So now we need to tighten it. So what I do, just because it makes it a little easier than having this big loose loop, is I give my hook a little twist, and now it's a little more secure. So then I use my index finger that's holding my hook to kind of pin that in place so I can take this out. And then you have both ends here, and we're going to pull on both of them to snug it up. So now you can see that this end is going to loosen it, and this end is going to tighten it. So we're going to pull on that tail to tighten it. So now we're going to work on our chain. Now if you do the slip knot this way, try not to pull it too tight, because then you'll never get your hook back through this loop that we just made. So you want to make sure it's got a little bit of room in there. So to start your chain, I hold this tail that we just made, or preferably on the knot if you can, so then you're not pulling this and making that loop tighter. So I hold my yarn, I put my working yarn over my index finger like this, and I kind of tension it with my ring finger and pinky finger, and that's how I keep it from going too loose or too tight. And that is all personal preference. You'll find how you like to hold it best. I personally like to hold my hook like a steak knife, but there's some people that also hold it like a pencil. That's all personal preference as well. There's no right or wrong way. I personally think I hold it like a steak knife because I am actually left-handed, but I do crochet right-handed. So that might be a left-handed thing, but it might not be. So we're gonna feel what's more comfortable for us, whether it's a steak knife or pencil. There's no wrong way. I tend to hold this loop in place as well for my first stitch, just so it's not moving all over the hook like that. So I hold that in place. I have my working yarn here. I'm going to hold this knot. So this is our working yarn. We're going to yarn over So you're going to bring the yarn around the hook and over from right to left. And you're going to pull this knot up. Remember to try and keep it a little loose and not pull on this to make it too tight. And we're going to pull this loop that we made through the loop that's already on our hook, like so. And that will give us a chain. So I'm going to keep going and I'm going to do a few more just to show you guys. So we're going to yarn over from right to left and then pull this new loop we made through the loop that's on our hook. So right to left, pull through, right to left, pull through, right to left, pull through. Now we have these chains that are forming, and you don't have to hold the knot the entire time. You can kind of gradually move up just to keep a little bit of tension on it, especially if you're making a big long chain. You're not going to be able to hold the end the entire time and keep tension on it. So now we have our first row of chains. So how we count these is going to be the exact same of how we count our stitches when we are doing a regular row. So these little V's all count as one stitch. So this V here, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right closest to our hook here. So that is our row 1. So let's go over how to turn and single crochet. So when you do your chain, you're going to either be working, I guess, kind of down or from left to right. As your chain gets longer, you're kind of moving from left to right as you go across. And that is the only stitch that we are going to use in my patterns so far that will move from left to right. Everything else will go right to left as you are doing your rows. And what this means is that the right side of your work will be facing you and the wrong side of your work will be on the inside of your project. And we'll go over right side and wrong side a little later as well. So when you turn and go start a new row, you are going to miss this first chain on this first row only, just so that it gives it that little bit of space to kind of go up. And as well, if you tried to go through this one where your yarn is coming out of, it can get a little tricky. So we skip this first one and we're gonna go under the second one. So here's our second stitch here. For this row, we're gonna go just under the top one. So we're gonna go in the top one. We're gonna have 2 loops on our hook. We're gonna yarn over. It's gonna look a little different. It's not gonna come all the way from the back this time. It's gonna come from the side. But as long as it goes from right to left over your hook, that's fine. And we're gonna pull that new loop through. So we're gonna still end up with 2 loops on our hook. We're gonna yarn over again. This time it'll come all the way from the back and pull through both of them. And that makes our single crochet. And we'll do another one here. So we're going to go under this loop, yarn over, pull through that new loop, yarn over, and pull through both of them that are on our hook. Okay, and one more time. Ready? We're gonna go under this top one, go through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through both. So I'm going to finish the rest of the row here and then I'll show you the turn again. So most of my patterns are worked in the round, so you won't have to worry about the turn. But you never know, if you're reading another pattern, it's good to know what the terms mean and how to follow the directions on a pattern, because half the battle of crocheting is learning how to read the actual pattern. All right, so we've completed our first row here. So because we skipped a stitch when we started this row, there will be 1 less stitch in this row than there was in the previous row, but all rows beyond this will have the same stitch count. So we're gonna count our V's again to see how many stitches we have now. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So usually for back and forth patterns, when it calls for a turn, if you're doing single crochet, it'll be chain 1 and turn. So we're gonna have our work here. We're still working right to left. Then we're gonna chain 1. So it's exactly like the first row of chain we did. So we're gonna yarn over from right to left and pull that yarn through. And there's our chain. So now this will be the one that we skip before we keep crocheting. And this chain here does not count as a stitch in the row. So we had 7, it will still be 7. This does not make it 8. So now we're going to turn our work, and all that means is we're going to flip it over. So now this is the wrong side. This was the right side here, and now this is the wrong side because we're flipping our work over. If we were doing one of the stuffies, those are all worked in the round. So let's pretend this is long enough to join into a circle. We would just keep going around and around and around and around, and it would get bigger. So this right side would stay facing us on the outside the entire time. All right, so let's do one more row. So we have our work here. We finished our row, we did the chain 1. Now we're going to flip it over or turn our work. We did our chain here that we are going to skip, and we're gonna go under this first stitch. And now this stitch that we're going under is going to be under both sides of that V. I'm seeing if I can pull the stitch apart here so you guys can see it better. But see, there's 1, 2. So we're gonna go under 2, and that's how we're gonna continue from now on. So that first row where we just go under the one side, that is only for that first row when we're going back into the chain we created. So now we go in that stitch, and everything else is exactly the same. So we're gonna yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through both, and again. So we're going to go through both. We're going to go through both sides of that V, yarn over, pull through. We have 2 loops on our hook, yarn over, and pull through both. All right, one more time. We're going to go through both sides of our V. We're going to yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. Okay, and now I'm going to finish the rest of this row. This will be the basic stitch that you guys will use for most of my patterns. With all the things that are stuffed, it is all single crochet just to keep the stitches nice and close and tight so the stuffing doesn't fall out between them, and it makes it harder for little fingers to stick between the stitches and pull out the stuffing. So if you guys are following along with this with your DIY kits, you will have the same yarn, but your hook will be bigger. So there will be more spaces between your stitches, which is totally fine because this is just practice yarn. And with the more space, it'll be easier for you to see your stitches and count them and grab the right spot. So if it doesn't look exactly the same like this and nice and tight, then don't worry about it because you guys do have a bigger hook than what I'm using. So that is totally normal. The bigger the hook you use, the bigger the stitches, the bigger the work. And same with yarn. So if you were to make your stuffy in the yarn that's in the kits there, that nice sweet soft yarn, and then you go out and buy some blanket yarn or something thicker or bigger, you would obviously need a bigger hook to go with it. And even if you followed the same pattern, it would turn out much larger because you're using a bigger hook and a thicker thread. So to make them bigger, you don't necessarily have to change the pattern if you're just sizing up with your yarn and your hook size. All right, so let's turn one more time, and then we're gonna go over something else that's just a little different that we're gonna use in some patterns. So we're at the end of our row, so we should still have 7. So let's count them here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Perfect. So we're at the end of our row. We worked from right to left. Now we're going to do our chain 1. So we're gonna yarn over, pull through, and now we're gonna turn. So we're just gonna flip our work over, and now we've turned. So now we are back on the right side of the work. So your rows because we're working back and forth, are gonna go right side, wrong side, right side, wrong side, right side, wrong side. And that's fine, because this is just a sample piece and it's to learn our stitches. So some patterns I do back loop only stitches. So we're gonna go and see what that means now. So we have, I'm gonna pull my hook out here so I can use it to point. We have our stitch here, right? We have one side and two sides. So we have our front and we have our back of the stitch. Okay, so our little V where we count our stitch, we have the front and the back. So the term is fairly self-explanatory. When we're using back loop only, we're gonna do that row in only this back loop that's furthest away from you. And front loop only would be this front loop here that's closest to you. So let's do a row of back loop only single crochet. So we did our chain, which we are not going to crochet back into because that's our turning stitch as it's sometimes referred to. And we're gonna go into just, so this is the whole stitch here if I were to go through both. So we're gonna go just under that back stitch only. You can see the front stitch hiding underneath my hook here. And then again, you're gonna do the same thing as before. You're gonna yarn over, pull through. You're gonna have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, and pull through both. Okay, and there's our front loop. They're just sitting hanging out. So let's do the next one in the back loop. So you're gonna put your hook in under just that one loop, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. And again, hook under the back loop, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. And I'm gonna work my rest of the way across and I will show you why we do this, what effect it kind of gives the piece that you're working on. And it can be used in so many different ways. And it's a fairly easy stitch, but it can do some pretty neat things. All right, so now that we've completed our row, we still have our 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so now you see it's got this line here that wasn't there before in our previous rows. So these are our front loop stitches that are hanging out that we didn't stitch through. So it makes this kind of nice line. What it can also do is make a nice sharp turn, right angle turn to your work. Let's see if we can see it there. So we've worked up and now we're working this way, so in. So it can give this nice kind of sharp turn to your work. If you're doing like a foot maybe, or the bottom of something that you want nice and flat, you can use that stitch to kind of give a nice sharp turn to your work. All right, now we're gonna go over one more stitch here in this video. So we're at the end of our row. We're gonna do our chain 1 and turn again. So we're gonna yarn over, pull through, and now we're gonna turn our work. And now, again, we're on the wrong side. So now we're gonna go over the slip stitch. So we've done single crochet, we've done back loop only single crochet. If you wanna do front loop only single crochet, then it's exactly the same as the last row we did, except you're going under the front loop only this time and leaving the back loop to hang out, and it will do the same thing. It'll make a nice sharp turn in your work. So to do a slip stitch, we're gonna go under both our stitches, yarn over, pull through. So far it's the same as a single crochet. This is where it gets different. Instead of yarning over to make another stitch, we're gonna use what we have on the hook. So we're gonna catch this first loop here that we just pulled up on our hook and pull it through the other hook that is on, pull it through the other loop that is on our hook. And that is a slip stitch. So let's do another one here. So we're gonna go through both stitches, yarn over, pull through, and now we're going to use this first loop to pull through the second loop that's on our hook. And what this does in terms of aesthetics is it makes a really flat row, where the single crochet, or if you use a double crochet or any of the other stitches, they kind of work upwards and make the piece longer, whereas a slip stitch row is very flat. It doesn't really add any height to the piece. So it's kind of right on top of this last row, and it's very short compared to our 3 previous rows. So that is a slip stitch. And take a look at my other videos. We're gonna go over some other stitches, like how to increase and how to decrease. And if you guys bought the No Sew Octopus kit, there is another video as well, just showing a demo of how to do the tentacles, because those can be a little bit tricky. So thanks for watching, and subscribe to my channel.